Welcome to another episode of the Scully Sez podcast. Today, we're going to talk about art and how it's changed throughout time. Yes, I know, quite a change of pace from our normal conversations. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Patrick, and we've also got my loving grandfather, Tom, here too.
There you go.
So kind of what we're going to put the lens on today, there's a couple different things, but the biggest thing that I want to kind of focus in on is the commercialization of art, and whether or not the commercialization of art, which started out probably as a way to just get the art, which was a message, out to more people, in a way actually just diluted the message entirely from a lot of art and took away a lot of meaning of it. But also, I did want to suppose, and I think that you'd have some good insight into this, that perhaps the reason that art from 100 years ago seems so poignant and seems so, impassioned is because we're looking at it through that historical lens, and there is like this like great amount of like cosmic grief, I guess, that the artist is gone and that the time period's gone and all that. And so we're putting this like wistful belief on everything that was old, the nostalgia almost, but we rather, I didn't experience 100 years ago, but still the nostalgia for Art Deco or for whatever. And it maybe actually those guys were just doing the best that they could, and there wasn't such a poignant like thought process going into creating the art. Maybe it is retroactive. We kind of touched on that before we even started the podcast, but maybe it's less that art was so much more meaningful back then, and more so that as time goes on, you find the meaning in art. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, when you said about you look back, that reminds me of that Saturday night skit where the guy said, looking back at the past, we walked through the snow, we walked through blizzards, we had to go to school, we walked both ways, uphill, and we loved it. We loved it, you see. And so I don't think that they loved it at the time. And I think we talked a little bit about Van Gogh. He didn't have a very easy go of it. And he was, in some respects, he was an unusual character anyway. And people pretty much avoided him, So, and so a lot of times what happens with the passage of time, things change, or your outlook changes, and so things that were not all that pleasant seem to be not that bad, and after a while, something that was not pleasant at all, you look back on it, and it with time, it takes on a different aspect, and then as time goes on, it just gets to the point that that you kind of immortalize it. And that's what happens a lot of times. It's funny. One of the things I noticed, and this is I had never thought about this. We have Michelangelo, which did the David and the Sistine Chapel. All these works of art were almost photographic. You take a look at the marble, and you could see the veins.
You can see the veins underneath the skin. It's unbelievable. It is.
And so what they said is, one of the things that stopped that, and this is crazy, but I think there's something to it, was photography.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so
I can see that because art in a way, so. Not to be all art school about it, but art is essentially capturing the way that light reflects off of something, in a very literal sense, because everything you see is light, and everything that you're perceiving is a reflection generally off the matter that you're looking at. Anyways, so you have photography, which is a very, very accurate representation of the light coming off an object, so you get to see what a photo is, versus when you're painting only what you can see as a human. Some people get good at it. But anyone who watches a hyper-realistic painter, it's an unrecognizable painting up until like the final stage, because everything they're doing is abstracting so that the eye tricks itself into thinking it looks like what it's seeing. But photography is what you saw, I think that you're probably right. I think that you're probably right because if I, me and my wife gone on vacation and we're having a great time and I like want to remember it, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, I would have wrote about it, maybe tried to sketch a scene that I, remembered of it. And that would have been what it is, like that's what the tools that were there for me to record this instance. And now, I can just, I have two massive, nice cameras sitting over there that I could use, and I have used them, but I barely use them because this thing, what I mean? It's the same thing. It's about the access and it's also about like limitation, like art is born out of limitation. And so as we have less and less limits as far as, the ability to capture light, essentially, I for sure will, I think, decline, or for sure has declined, rather, production.
Actually, photography in some respects is an art form.
I'd agree.
I'm a great photographer. I can pick, there used to be this magazine called Life Magazine. Mm-hmm. And Life Magazine, basically, for many years, made quite a bit of money by showing these photographs that were, done by these fantastic photographers.
Like Lichtenstein or,
we all see
the other lady's name.
Well, yeah, we all see the same thing, but very few of us are able to capture it on in a photograph. So, but anyway,
that's absolutely it. Even that's why, sometimes people don't think that a photographer or really an artist in general is that valuable, but then you get to a day like a wedding day, right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden that artistry matters a whole bunch, right? Because then you're choosing, oh, well, I like the way this person looks, I like the way that person looks. That's art. That is the art of it, right? Is like, if my photos of the same event look different than your photos of the same event, that's what I saw. That's what you saw, and maybe what you saw is better than what I saw, or maybe what I saw is better than what you saw, but, the capturing it, and then obviously there's a whole other component of mastery of the tools. That is also something, that's what any sport, any sport, art, anything like that, you have to master your tools,
Sure.
But so, kind of what I kind of want to poke at a little bit here is when I think about something like Starry Night, because I was listening to the song Vincent by Don McLean.
Yes.
Great song.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a conversation with Van Gogh.
Yes.
And I think that it's very interesting that we now look at his art and we're like, wow, this is so amazing. And it is. It is amazing art. When you go to the Art Institute of Chicago and you look at the Van Gogh section, it's incredible. It's moving. But also, you have to wonder, was he just painting a room? Was he just painting the starry sky, and that's the way he saw it, and that was the eye of the beholder, right? Was what we got as the outcome. I don't know. And I think that what I've tried to do a lot more, like my brother Aiden, because he does art, he always tries to say, he's like, it's the attempt at the art that's the more important thing than even the actual outcome of the art. It's the idea of putting yourself out there, being vulnerable emotionally and whatnot in order to create. But and I think that that's true back then too. Obviously you have to be vulnerable to create. It doesn't matter, even though maybe painting would have been a more accepted medium during Van Gogh's time. It certainly wasn't, going to work and going. You know what I mean? Like, it certainly wasn't the most standard path necessarily.
Well,
go ahead, sir.
No, I was going to say that it's interesting you should mention Van Gogh because, I've read a number of articles on Van Gogh, and A Starry, Starry Night, actually, there's a psychological aspect to his paintings. And that was, as you know, he had nervous breakdowns. He got to the point that he got to the point that he just couldn't put up with reality any longer. But as he was becoming more and more depressed, and as the world was becoming more and more frightening to him, that Starry Night, that's the stars. If you take a look at the stars are, they're in some respects almost like out of control. They're almost like meteors.
They're blowing like a wind almost.
Yes, they are. And so they've done studies on that, and they said you could see his psychological decline at that time. He was becoming more and more paranoid, and more. And the other one, which is quite similar, is the cornfield.
Yep.
They say the crows are quite threatening as they're coming in. So and that's my.
So what I'm kind of trying to get at here is Vincent may have known that he wanted to do more with his art, as far as speaking to people, touching people, whatever, all that. But in actuality, I don't necessarily know that that's the case. It's kind of the same way that I feel about like hip hop music now. Like I love hip hop music. I really love hip hop music. I listen to a lot of it, but the modern stuff, you really got to sift to find the people who are actually spreading a message that you agree with, or a message that you can understand, or to find the people who are like genuinely using their artistry to further the entire cause of art, or people who are just kind of like subsisting, like I'm not really listening to the modern radio stuff as much. Anyways, point being, a lot of times you listen to hip hop now and you're like, dude, like, what are you even saying? Like, what are you even doing? Whatever. But then I'll go back and listen to a song that I consider a classic, like something from like 20 years ago. I'll listen to, like something from like Lil Wayne or something from Eminem or whatever. Something where I'm like, man, these guys are really like wordsmiths. They're really lyricists, and it's really good. And then you go and listen to it, and you're like, like, actually, now that I'm an adult and not, 10 years old like I would have been 20 years ago, I'm listening to this and I'm like, what's the difference between this classic and the modern music? Really, it's just that I'm not a kid anymore, so I don't resonate with a 16-year-old, 17-year-old talking about what crazy stuff they're gonna do. You know what I mean? Because it just doesn't resonate with me. I'm not there mentally at all anymore. So it's like, I wonder if that same thing though, you can extrapolate that to art as a whole. Like one of my favorite things of modern art, and I don't know that it's necessarily always modern as art in the sense of, like the technical term, but I like the BMW art cars. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but the BMW art cars, it's like, I think 9 cars that they did, and they had a bunch of different artists come and do them. Like Jeff Koons did one that it's the only good thing Jeff Koons has ever done, in my opinion. He did a really cool one that like it looks like the aerodynamics over it, but he did it in neon colors,
Yes.
so the car when it's moving looks nuts.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that I believe it says "Protect Me from What I Want," which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool car, like just like these like interesting sayings like written all over the car. Warhol did one with like a patchwork scheme all over it. It's basically a bunch of different colors all over the car, but it, being an artist, even though it's just paint splotches all over a car, he assembled it in such a way that it looks fantastic, and so anyway, so what I'm saying is while this is like a throwaway commercial thing, it's BMW. They probably get paid to do these BMW art cars, it doesn't strike me as any less valuable than the person who put the paint to canvas like 100 years ago. I feel they're in it for the same reason.
Well, in some respect, though, art has kind of been hijacked, in my opinion, because you look at somebody like Van Gogh, you look at somebody like Michelangelo, or whatever, whoever it could be, and so you have a piece of art, and the piece of art is there for art's sake. So if the Michelangelo does a figure, he does it because he was trying to show the perfect as perfectly as he can. That's the idea behind it. Whereas sometimes they've hijacked the art in order to sell you a car.
Yep.
There's a different motivation behind it, and so it's not as it's kind of lost some of its I don't know what you would say, but the meaning of art the meaning of art is actually trying to convey something to you, something significant, other than wouldn't it be nice to have a VW Beetle? Oh, I mean,
Well, and I don't disagree with you, but what I actually completely agree with that. I think that the society and capitalism, whatever, I don't want to make a boogeyman of it, but what, just the normal society that we engage in has made art exactly what you're saying. It's it's more to sell. It's been co-opted by ad men or strategists, whatever. That's kind of what art is now.
Yeah.
I more mean to say that the individual who's going out to create the art, we don't know who we're seeing right now who's going to be someone that, like, in 100 years people are like, oh, that stuff was actually super, super powerful. That stuff was super, super, like, I don't think we would know who that is yet. And I think that it's interesting to think that, like, maybe, and obviously I'm joking here, but maybe, Kanye West is like the artist of our time that we look back and we're like, well, actually, everything he created was, you know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't know, you know what I mean? Because to us right now, he seems crazy. Well, it also seems crazy, a lot of these artists, as you watch their development up. If you look at the end of Picasso's life, if you look at the end of Van Gogh's life, if you look at, the end of, Michelangelo's life, I'm pretty sure Michelangelo died on a project because he was just so consumed and obsessed with his work that he was, nothing else mattered. He couldn't see anything else other than the paint in front of him,
Yes.
And I'm not going to act like, by the way, the song Jesus Walks, great song, is equal to a fresco in of Michelangelo's in Italy. But I will say that I think that the context that matters, we aren't going to see yet. But you're absolutely right about the art being co-opted by commercialism, and that's probably what leads us into the transitional period from art being this academic experience where it was, the idea of hyperrealism and the idea of, if you're going to be abstract, the idea of abstraction was like Salvador Dali's abstractions,
yes.
right? And so his stuff, you could say he's crazy or he's a lunatic, but when you look at the work, the work is there. The fundamentals are there. The tones, the color theory, all of it, it's all there.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And that has changed. That has been cheapened, I think. I don't think that exists anymore.
Well, Salvador Dali, actually, in his own right, was a great artist. I mean,
for sure.
He started out as being a very traditional artist, and as he changed, you could still see that he was still a master artist.
Yes.
But his work was also intellectual. And one of the things that, and of course I'm not pretending that I understand it, but one of his themes was time.
Yeah.
Time. What is time, and what and so those are the clocks that he has that so that
well, and I think that's one of the cool things about art in general is it is kind of a denotator of time. Like when you look at a decade's art, it is in a large part what defines the styling for it. If someone's going to go have a 50s themed party, I mean, there's a for sure chance they're going to be looking at 50s art and 50s pictures and stuff. Like, I mean, Nighthawks, how many times do people just redo Nighthawks as a vibe to do a noir? I mean, how many movie scenes are just Nighthawks? I mean,
well, there you go. No, so that's what I'm thinking about is art. So when you're talking about when you're talking about Dali, you look at it and there's an intellectual aspect to it. You don't know. You try and figure out what's this guy trying to say. You see, I mean, there's that element to it. It's not something that you just look at and say, oh, yeah, it looks like a funny-looking clock, or, yeah, St. John of the Cross looking down at the world. The message is not all that easy to figure out. And
it has you thinking about things like time. Speaking of which, this is our 20-minute time, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who's given us a listen on the radio in Northwest Indiana. We really appreciate you guys. You can find us at TikTok, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Facebook. We try and be everywhere. and give us your feedback. We're at Scully Sez Pat and Scully Sez Tom at gmail.com. We really appreciate the listen, and catch the full episode on one of our platforms. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we try to
do that mark. Speaking of time, though, too, look at this. I'll turn this on. We got the...
My God.
See there?
I got this maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
See, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to,
So
I had to
it's
show
exactly-
that off.
Oh, yeah.
No, actually, it looks really cool, by the way. Of course. That's what's funny is you showing me that made me think of someone who's taken that art and done exactly what we're talking about, Pop. So Salvador Dali makes you think. Well, there's a couple different weird watches that do it. I want to say one of them is called a Cartier Crash that has that type of melted clock type look to it.
Yeah.
But there's one called the Frank Mueller Crazy Hours, which is an unbelievably expensive watch. But the complication on the watch is that the hours are not in the right place.
Okay.
So when you look down and you read the watch, it's correct. Like it'll be like at 6 and at whatever, but the 6 isn't where the 6 goes. So it jumps around to whatever time it is, and that's inspired by that type of stuff. And so I would say that's a really cool piece of art.
Yes.
Probably in 100 years, people are going to be like, how did these primitive idiots figure something like this out? You know what I mean? But like, then at that same time, it also sucks because, it's like a super luxury item. Not that art isn't necessarily, but it's a super luxury item. So it's like the only people whose hands it goes into is, people who like see valuation, people who are speculative usually on these things, And that's what's unfortunate is non-speculative art is a really lost thing. Actually, Tony kind of showed the only place, the final frontier of like real just art for the purpose of art is kind of tattooing. That's one of the last places. Like it's hard to commercialize tattooing the way that people would like to, because ultimately the canvas is a person, and not, even though people would do anything for money, not everyone's selling their, people don't want to put Lowe's on their head,
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, this is something that's so, but like I say, you look at Van Gogh, you look at some of these other artists, you look at Picasso, another example. What is the guy trying to say? So you so you look at this, and whether or not you understand it, whether or not you like it or not, it's causing you to think. Now let me ask you this question, and this is something that's always going to bother me. You remember Andy Warhol?
Yeah.
Considered to be. What the hell does a Campbell's soup can have to do with art?
And that right there is the conversation in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so divisive. Warhol's art is so divisive because there's part of me where I'm like, I had a skateboard back in the day that was the Warhol Marilyn Monroe. Because he did a Monroe same way, where he did a lithograph or whatever. And I had it. I like it. It's visually pleasing. I like the soup can piece. The art, the colors, it's visually pleasing. But I also totally agree with you. Like, what does this even mean? Like, what's even the point here? And I mean, I'm gonna get his exact quote in a moment here, but I do agree with that. I don't know
everything is that everything is beautiful or something like that.
Something like that.
Pretty, but actually, it's almost like I'm arguing against myself because I'm saying, true art causes you to question. Well, I am questioning what the hell a soup can has to do with art, and maybe that's the question. You see?
So he said, well, absolutely, that's the question. And what he said, this is actually pretty funny. I think you'd like this. He said, "I used to have the same lunch every day for 20 years. I guess the same thing over and over again. And pop art is about liking things. I like Campbell's soup."
Yes.
All right, simple enough. He likes soup, good, but I do agree with you. I do.
Yeah, I mean,
But go ahead, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, like, I look at Picasso. Picasso, I mean, he had these periods they called the blue period, and he had a number of, but you could see a progression, and you could see now. You can see him thinking. I think he has one of the things he has. I think it's called the nude. walking down the staircase. Well, of course, you can't really, you can't see it's kind of it's a person.
Yeah, yeah.
And you see the motion. You kind of see the motion of walking down the staircase. You see that. There's something there that, we have something in Chicago at the Daily Center, which is people are still arguing about what it is. Some people say it's a bird. Some people say it's a woman.
Talk about the statue up front.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, and so.
Well, also, I mean, even beyond surrealism, even right. Like if you go to walk right into the Art Institute, you walk right up the steps. It's Saturday morning on La Grande Jatte, I think, I think it's whatever. It's the anyone who doesn't know the name of the piece that I just said, I butchered it, but it's something like that. It's the piece with the lady in black with the umbrella. It's the pointillism piece.
Oh yes,
and they're all sitting on the park.
Yes,
but yeah,
yes.
So that piece, if you stand back when you first walk in, Ferris Bueller's Day Off style, and you just look at it, you're like, damn, what a cool piece. But as you get closer and closer and closer, and you get to the border, you realize, obviously I'm not going to explain pointillism to everyone here, but, it's all little dots,
Yes.
And so when you get, like, this close to it, much to the chagrin of the security at the Art Institute, but when you get this close to it, it's nothing.
Right.
It's nothing.
Yes.
It's not the painting that you think. And I think that's like part of that is really cool. And I think that when you're talking about someone like Picasso versus someone like a modern Jeff Koons now, who does modern art and he'll do some deconstructive stuff but less surrealist stuff, the thing that Picasso did is he didn't mail it in. The technique is still there.
Yeah.
And that's why you can talk for 3 hours about his paintings. I mean, his simplest painting is one line, or I don't think it's a painting, I think it's a sketch, but it's Loomp. His dog, the wiener dog.
Yeah.
It's unmistakably a wiener dog. Every person who's ever had a wiener dog, there's like emotion conveyed in it, in the way that its tail sits. It's one line. It's literally he just did this and, did the whatever. But the way the tail is, the way the paws are, the way whatever, it's just, that's the thing that you can't, like, teach. That's the thing that you can't, like, pay enough for. You can't do whatever. Is the idea of conveying motion and emotion in a static picture. That's tough. And, kind of I want to say a losing art, but then the flip side of it is I'll go and, like, watch my brother, like, he'll show me his sketchbook and I'll see some of his, like, friends' sketchbooks or other artists that he follows that are, like, contemporary and stuff. And it's like, there is fantastic work out there. I think the problem is it's just become so suffocating to have to, like, try and make your hobbies be your job because no one likes what, their work, or most people don't like their work. I mean, you either have a vocation, that you feel like you're doing something good, or you make a lot of money and you feel secure, or you're kind of in a zero space, which I think most people live in, where it's like, I don't hate my job, I don't hate my life, I don't want to blow up my life, but I also wish I had different, you know what I mean? I think that a lot of people live in that. And so when it comes to doing art, it's really hard for them, because it's like, well, I could be a teacher and do my art on the side and I would probably have a pretty good life, but then there's the social media, looking over the fence at other people, competing with other people. You're in the art world, so you're around a bunch of hyper wealthy people, and that warps your perspective on things. So it's just that those type of things have kind of led it to be that the idea of the guy who just has like this nice, or not even a nice, but like a studio in Brooklyn, which is probably because it would cost $6,000 for him to have a studio in Brooklyn. But, a studio in Brooklyn that's just covered in paintings, and, when the guy passes away, you go in there and there's, unearthed masterpieces. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but it does feel like that's eroded a little bit, and it's been cheapened a little bit,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. There's a famous piece of art. I mean, worth all kinds of money. Tremendous amount of money. It's a white canvas, and then there's a line drawn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
That's it. A line. A line drawn on a white canvas. Okay?
I believe I've seen this one.
Yeah. Now, here's my question. Okay. Now, I go out and I get myself a canvas and I draw a line. Is that a work of art? And should my line be worth as much as this guy's line? And this guy's line may be worth $1 million. Should I be able to go out and draw a line and say, hey, my line is as good as his line, give me $1 million? Or is there some other component in that? Is it somebody that's an artist, he draws a line, and then people say, oh, there must be something to this, because don't you see, Jean-Pierre, he drew that line, and he's a very deep thinker.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge component of it. Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? Like, absolutely. It's a storyteller. So, like, the artist is almost like a music artist or something like that, where it's like, oh, they might be saying this or that, but that's actually a commentary on society, actually. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I remember seeing the one that really made me mad, and but I did sit and look at it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It made me mad. I did sit and look at it for 20 minutes, and I'm thinking about it, 12 years later. So maybe that kind of might end the conversation right there in a way. It's like, yeah, it's art because it made you think for that long.
Yeah.
But I was in the Washington, D.C., one of the art museums in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it's a Smithsonian or not, but big white canvas, just all white canvas. It was super thick, but it was just completely white. And it was like in the art gallery, and I'm like, okay, like, what the hell is this, And then you go and read it, and it's like, it's actually like 14,000 layers of white paint on a regular canvas. And I'm like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, what is this?
Yes.
But then there's also a part of me that, like, what the hell? What is this? Being the reaction means that they did do their job, I guess, And so, like, the juxtaposition matters. Like, I know some people talk about like going into, like, it's a common like online joke to do to people is you go into like an art gallery or you host your own art gallery somewhere and you just put trash in the gallery, but the trash in the gallery like actually like people look at it.
Yes.
And Chicago native Virgil Abloh, rest in peace, actually has a great thing to say about this. He said, when I'm wanting to design, I can't remember what product he's referencing, but when I want to design like a coffee mug, I could design the coffee mug, or I could design the room that the coffee mug's in. And that's like the thought process between a lot of these modern artists. Is like, yeah, maybe it being a can doesn't make it art, like a smashed can, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes.
But this beautiful room that I've assembled to put it in, this setting that makes it seem so avant-garde when it's literally trash, that's the art. And that kind of leads me to my thesis statement about art always is it is a eye of the beholder thing entirely. So, like, unfortunately, even though there's people that I hate, like Koons, I hate Jeff Koons. I think he sucks. I mean, I'm sure as a guy he's great, but I think his art sucks. And he, like, still is ostensibly an artist, because for me to feel the emotion to, like, be like, I hate what you do, means it is working, like that is reality. It is working. Like, even what we do, like our conversation is information and all that sort of stuff. But like at the end of the day, there is an element of designing the room. There is an element of building like a framework, and so that the conversation inside of that framework, because of the juxtaposition, actually has meaning. Like that's why Joe Rogan's set or something is so important. You know what I mean? Because as soon as you see a person, you don't even have to see Joe. You just see the little, darkened room with the mic, and you're like, oh, I know this is a person talking on the Rogan podcast. You know what I mean? And that makes it his art. And so I always end up having to go soft on art. I really do. I maybe it's because I'm young, but I always have to go soft on art.
Well, but the lines get blurred, and so where does the art start and where does it stop? For example, we're talking about getting a reaction out of you. So if I walk down the street, pick up a rock and throw it through your window, okay, that's got a reaction.
Right.
Yeah, got a reaction. And I'll say to you, well, that's art. That's my art form, don't you see? And so it's got to be, and you're thinking about it. You know, you may think, and just the same thing you said. So you say, look, he came down the street, he picked up a rock and threw it to my window. Why? Why did he do that? And you may think about that for years. So, yeah. What was this guy thinking? Yeah.
There is an art to being an asshole, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's thousands of, there's millions of them out there. Yeah.
It's a cheap art. I'll give you that. That's a cheap art. But you know that is a good. I don't think it's just that illicit. So what I've always thought, my working theory for art is something that serves no purpose other than to elicit a reaction. So cars have always been tough because I would say, I mean, I would challenge any art person. I'll go car, for art piece. There's so many cars that are beautiful, beautiful art. I mean, Aston Martin DB11s, Aston Martin DB9s, Aston Martin DB5s, and that's one brand. You know what I mean? Like, you go to the Ferrari 250 Barchetta, the Ferrari 252, you know, like, it's just, you know, there's so many cars, top to bottom, even normal, attainable cars. The Volkswagen Carmen Ghia is a gorgeous looking car. My personal car, hey, I hate to shout out my own car, but I have a 1993 25i. That is a handsome car. I would say gorgeous, but that is a handsome car. You know, 70s Skylarks. You go look at 30s Fords. Go look at even Model Ts. Like, all of these cars have such a high level of art in them. The problem is that they ultimately do serve a purpose. Ultimately, even if my BMW is closer to art than it is to car because of how little I drive it and how little I use it, because it's just, no need. I have other cars. But if I drove that car every day, or if I needed to, that car would instantly become a tool. No matter what, that car would just instantly become a tool. Whereas, like, we have a Singer sewing machine upstairs. We use our other sewing machine. We'll never use that Singer sewing machine. So it has transcended past its use and become art. It's a piece now, you know? I think that can happen with things. So I think that the problem is, like, if someone were to, like, throw a rock through your window to, like, make an artistic reaction, I would think that they would either have to have some creative mechanism for how they threw the art, or how they threw the rock, perhaps, like, having you step over some sort of Rube Goldberg machine that ends up throwing the rock through your window, which would be pretty funny. Or there has to be, like, some level of like, comedy, like, if you threw a window through someone's window, that might be pretty, you know, there might be some art there. So I think that it has to be something where there is that, like, square peg, round hole dynamic, where it's like, it doesn't really make any sense other than to just, like, look at it, you know?
What about hold on, let me turn it. I forgot the artist, but the banana, right? They duct tape a banana. Yeah. That's the thing. And people go crazy over this because they duct tape a banana to the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, literally, like, they'll just, here's lunch, bang, duct tape. And it's like, you know, I mean, but it's true, because it's like, a banana taped to the wall is no longer a lunch. You know what I mean? Like, it has become art now. Like, very few people are going to go and peel a banana off duct tape and just be like, shoot, man, I'm going to have a banana. You know?
Yeah. But you said something, and I disagree with it. You said about that Singer sewing machine became a work of art. That was never the intention when it was made. So you can't have, if you have, you know, they used to have this thing called a pet rock.
Yeah.
So there's the rock, and it's just a rock. And then you attribute something to it that was never intended, that was never there. So the Singer sewing machine is an old sewing machine. That's all it is. You like it, you say, yeah, it reminds me of a time going by, but it's not a piece of art. It's not.
Well, but I would say that the reason, I actually don't disagree with you there, because it's the same thing as, like, old industrial equipment. You know, if you go look to an old mill or something,
yes,
those old machines are gorgeous, you know, with the big wheels and their big, like, cast iron bodies.
Yes.
And then they hand paint all the stuff on them. So I would say that the Singer isn't the art. The painting on the Singer is the art, firstly, for that. rich from a guy who keeps it in the thing. So it's actually sideways inside the thing, and I'm using it as a table. But anyways,
Yeah.
I do agree that in a certain way, I just think that it's so transcended its purpose that the only reason it's in my home is because I like to look at it. Ergo, it's art, at least to me, you know?
Yes. Well, see, and when I was looking up stuff about art, and I thought I would not go there because I thought it would be too silly, but prehistoric art. Art. All right. The guy, he goes up and he's in this cave and he puts something on the wall. Now that's art. That is
cave
art.
Drawing you're talking about.
That's art.
Mm-hmm.
And because he did something, and going to your point, there's no purpose to it.
Right.
It's not going. What does it? It's not going to help him go hunting. It's not going to help him grow anything. It's just there. I mean, so
it's not even at recorded history point yet. Really, they're not really doing that yet. Even so, yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, the question becomes, what's the difference between decoration and art? Is he just decorating because there's nothing on the wall, or is he trying to convey a thought to somebody? And if you have a hole in the wall, and you take a painting that somebody did and you put that over the hole in the wall to cover the hole in the wall, that doesn't make it into a work of art. It's just something that's covering up a hole in the wall.
Yeah, well, that I agree with. I think that the problem with the conversation of... I was looking for something around here. The problem with the conversation of, like, if something's art or if it's not, when it has a purpose, where it starts to get muddy for me, is, like, stuff like this. So, I have... Sorry, let me gather this in front of me. So, I have these things, these cards, for playing, like, card games.
Yeah.
You game with them. But they're different than, like, for example, this. So, like, this is a baseball card. It's one of Derek Jeter's rookie cards, actually, from the event me and Tom shot in Chicago. But I got a couple of them. I got these things. They're all in their slabs. They're all graded or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Not art. Not art. No matter what, they're collectible. Collectible is not art, necessarily. It can be, but it's not.
Yeah.
Those are collectible, not art. These are game pieces, these guys. Mm-hmm. These magic cards. But some of the art on them is really, really cool. Like, it's really nice. Like, if this is Lord of the Rings theme stuff.
Yes.
And so, this is where I start to think, I start to, like, almost betray my own value of that art has to have no purpose beyond itself, is when I look at something like this and I'm like, but, like, this is art. Like, this is something Carl would do. This is something someone had to draw. Someone had to have the thought process. They want aesthetics were the top thing,
Yes.
And I couldn't deny this being art. But I absolutely can deny this being art. I'm not saying that the person who arranged the letters on the card and graphic designed the card didn't do art. That part might be. But this itself isn't art. This is a stay of value, or it's like memorabilia. And I think that that's impossible to be art. But this, even though it has a purpose of playing the board game, eventually the board game will go away, or the card game will go away, yes. And this will just be a small piece of art. Kind of the same thing as like cigarette cards and stuff like that from back in the day. At a time, it was like an ad or whatever in a cigarette pack. But after, there's no more cigarettes in those packs anymore, and time has gone well past it, they become art. So I think that that's kind of the thing, even with like the singer that I was kind of trying to touch on. But one thing I did want to get into, we kind of briefly went past this. So then you get to the Warhol, where Warhol starts to do the Campbell's thing. He starts to do whatever. You get people like Barbara Kruger, who kind of did the big red texts. Mm-hmm. And that became Supreme, the skate shop and skate brand. That became their logo, all that type of stuff. That type of art, I find a lot of enjoyment in partaking in, but I also understand why people kind of don't love that type of stuff. And so when I look at, like, here, this is one of the ones that I wanted to show you guys, I think I can do this.
Let's see.
1 second. I just go right here. Yep. Okay.
Oh.
So you can see it now. My screen pops.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay.
Protect.
So this is the one that I was talking about. This car. Protect me from what I want, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's done in a reflective thing, so at night when it's flying by, it looks like that normally.
Yeah, yes.
But at nighttime, it's reflective.
Yeah.
And it says, on this side, it says, you are so complex you don't respond to danger. And the unattainable is invariably attractive. And lack of charisma can be fatal. Right? Like all of these really, really interesting sayings and phrases. She called the series is called Truisms. All these phrasings and all these really interesting design aspects or whatever you want to call them, and it's still on an ad. Now, this is what I think that everyone can do better to shift to understand modern art a little bit more. She can't get that message that she thinks is so important out without engaging in some sort of consumerism, capitalism, right? There's not really an avenue for that anymore. And not that it doesn't exist. Like you can make YouTube videos, you can do whatever. But this is something that it's on Le Mans. People see it. Every person who ever looks up a BMW art car is going to see this car. It's access. And so I think one of the things that we forget when you look at someone like a Van Gogh, he never got his access ever in his lifetime. A lot of these artists now want the opportunity to get their access, want the opportunity to be in control of their own narrative, so that when they pass, it's not like, oh, their art becomes this or their art becomes that. Or, I think a lot of people, good or bad, are obsessed with the control of those type of things. And so I find it to be tough to call, like I said, I don't like Koons, but it's tough for me to talk too much crap on Koons because he also might just be navigating the world of art in the only way that is really viable in today's day, So that's kind of what my whole thesis for the whole thing is. Maybe it's always been this way in a certain matter of speaking, and it just never accelerated to this point.
Well, let me ask you this: have you? This is going back probably 50 years, maybe more. Norman Rockwell.
Yep.
Norman Rockwell. He did a number of works.
Really good stuff.
He was never considered to be an artist. Never.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, they always said all these art critics, they always said, no, this man is not an artist. He is an illustrator.
Illustrator, yeah.
That's what he is, an illustrator. And so he had some great works. He like the Four Freedoms. He had the one with freedom of religion. We see this. You see this older woman bowing her head, or you see
freedom of want.
Yeah,
that's the turkey.
Yeah. All those things. All of them. I mean, he painted them. He painted them, and they all make you think. And yet, a lot of people are saying, a lot of these supposed art critics saying, nah, it's not really art. It's not art. Well, what is it? And it becomes murky to me because you get the same art critic saying, no, this Rockwell, any of this stuff that he came up with is really not art. But now that soup can, that's art. That's art. Same guy saying that. And I'm like, well, I'm a little confused here. So, and that's...
Yeah, well, and then, so this is the part that we haven't even touched on that is super true about art is a lot of it is money laundering. A lot of it is, I'm hopelessly wealthy. I have my buddy Andy create a Campbell's soup can thing. I push him through all the media channels that I've got friends in. He becomes a super famous artist. Andy had to pay off his debt, so he made me 5 or 6 of the soup paintings. Now they're worth $20 million. Now I can take that $20 million and I can donate it to the Smithsonian. Oh, there's my tax bill gone for this year. Next year, I'll donate another one. There's my, you know what I mean? And then so like a lot of it works that way. Where that's why these collections are even loaned out. I mean, half of the Art Institute of Chicago is loaned out from like 2 families. You know what I mean? And like And I'm not hating on them, by the way, either. Like, someone needs, if this is the way that you're going to make, participate in the American economy, I'm not mad at that. I'm happy that you're sharing it with people ultimately. So, it's all good. But, there is like a lot of a laundering element to it and a lot of like a market manipulation element to it, forced scarcity, especially when you get to the point that nowadays good forgers and restorers, which are just forgers that are not, doing it illegally, those guys can do essentially one-to-one dupes down to, the carbon like trapped in the paint and crap like that. You know what I mean? Like these guys are like, doing these crazy things. And so it's like, then you have to, at a certain point, then you have to confront yourself with, is the value of this painting because Pablo Picasso's hand touched it, or is it because of how it looks? Yeah. And then you have to realize that it might actually be because Pablo Picasso's hand touched it and a real artist touched it, and that is what it is. But there's so many different instances of art being like cheapened, but then on the flip side of it, I kind of like think further into it, and I'm like, I don't know if it's even necessarily being cheapened or if it's just more public the way that it's like been navigated, because I have to imagine there was an equivalent to Warhol in the 20s. I have to imagine there was equivalent to Warhol in the 1860s. You know what I mean? Like there had to have been people are like, oh man, this is just like printing press. I'm sure the printing press was like whack at first. I'm sure it was like, oh dude, like your front page sucks compared to our hand-drawn front page. You know what I mean? But, like, that's the way she goes sometimes. I mean.
Well, yeah, it's, but, and when you talk about the capitalistic aspect to it, people like Michelangelo and people like Da Vinci or whatever, these guys, they did it for money. They did it for money.
Yeah, people forget that. Yeah, those guys were very well off.
Yeah, exactly.
They were almost royal.
Well, the guy
like Michelangelo.
Another aspect, he got not a painter, but Shakespeare was considered to be a millionaire. I mean, a guy. They'd say, write me up a story about, and he just write up a story.
Yeah, it was like Walt Disney, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly the point, yeah.
And that's another person that's actually great to talk about this. This is like,
yes.
So Walt Disney, who was a talented voice actor himself,
yes.
was a talented artist himself, and an incredibly talented businessman, obviously.
Yeah.
A pretty talented engineer, too, from the sounds of it, because he was really pushing those guys, like the monorail, not the monorail project, sorry, the train around his whatever. That's all him. That was entirely he was the model train guy. He wanted to do that. So like it's like this guy who's in so many different ways so powerful and so great at his job, and then at the same time I'm sure contemporary artists, and I know now people will be like, oh man, you just like cheapened the craft, and you did this or you did that, and it's like, well, right, but then like the flip side of it is how many kids owe their start in animation to watching Walt Disney's stuff, or to seeing Walt Disney pull the cover back. I mean, how many Walt Disney shows have you seen where it's Disney drawing something, or he goes in the studio and he's showing how this thing was made? Like, he was the guy who started that stuff of showing the inside of the studio and showing how everything went. And I think that he also kind of liked Rockwell. I think him and Rockwell kind of would have been, moderate contemporaries. I think Rockwell would have been a bit older than him, but point being that he kind of got that same reputation where it was, you're an illustrator, you're like a cartoonist, you're not an artist, you're a cartoonist. And it's like, I mean, like we could go back and forth all day about consumerism and whatever and all that, and it's like, you can't say that something like Steamboat Willie is an art now. If you were to pick it up now, it is. It's hand-drawn frames. It's a level of work that wasn't put in that isn't put in now generally on most projects, and it's really creative how they did it, what they did with the limitations that they had, everything like that, and you have to say, like, anytime I go and see I'm somewhere where someone's screening it, because it's it's important animation, so every other art place has something about it, or every animation place has something about it. I always pop in and I go and watch Steamboat Willie, because I'm like, dude, it's like 10 minutes where it's like, this is such a cool glimpse into the like underlying foundation of animation these days. And
sure.
I think it's so weird that I kind of agree with you. The more I'm thinking about it, I think it's so weird that someone like a Rockwell or a Disney wouldn't be seen as equal to a Warhol, if not greater, as an artist. As far as artistic value.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of times they make our money and so they're looked down upon.
Right.
Yeah,
God forbid.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, the guy's made $1 million. I mean, he can't be a real artist. The guy's extremely wealthy. Now, there's a guy down the street. Actually, the guy's just about starving to death, but there's an artist.
That's a real artist right
yeah,
there.
Yeah, I mean, they make jokes about starving artists, and of course, it's very, very tough. Anything in the artistic field is very, very tough to make it. Very tough.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. I mean, we both know this in a real way, kind of watching Keeks and Carl, like they have to build step by step these things that are like purely people have to just like what you see in something and continue to like give you money and time for it, basically. You know what I mean? That's that tomorrow both of them could have to, go and work a normal job. Probably not, because they're both talented as hell, but like in theory, they could have to go and work a normal job at any point in time because someone could just decide, I don't like your stuff anymore. And that's all it is. It's not like the guy who makes staples. Well, everyone's going to still buy staples, even if there's, even if they become out of vogue. Like, it'll wind down, it's not going to go off tomorrow. But for fashion or for art, it's really hard. It's a lot harder to stay publicly relevant. I mean, how many people do you know in the music industry that are one-hit wonders?
Yes.
How many people, or even if they're not one-hit wonders, the one hit is all that sits there, and then there's really nothing more. It's like Devo, like Whip It. Like, they would be people like that band has way more than just the one song. But if you asked the average person, that's what they know of them, Like Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine has like 5 songs that are awesome, but all anyone's gonna remember is Bulls on Parade. And it kind of like, it goes that way unless you're like a place like, like Led Zeppelin has like 5 songs people will remember. Queen has like 4 or 5 songs that people remember. The Beatles got 4 or 5 songs. And so it's like kind of the same thing as an artist. Like Van Gogh, you can always think of like 4 or 5 paintings. Picasso, you can think of like 4 or 5 paintings, But then like maybe if you were less seasoned, you go look at Georgia O'Keeffe and you'd be like, I don't really know the one with the cow skull. I know that one. And it's like, she's actually made like, 200, 300, if not more of these, she's whatever. And so I guess like even into the commercialization part of it, like the familiarity is super important to getting the idea of the art proliferated, which I think is any artist's goal in a way, is to try and proliferate your art, and get it out there because it all has some message or some personal touch on it at least,
Well, there's another question. I guess, what's the motivation?
It depends, right? I would say that for it to be art, the motivation has to be the art. Like someone who practices law,
yes,
because they love the law.
Yeah,
I think you could argue is an artist. I think you could.
Well, you could do that, but let me ask you this question. A guy gets a canvas, he draws a line across it, and makes $1 million. Right? Makes $1 million. They say this is truly a work of art. This is phenomenal. What was his motivation in drawing that line? Was he saying, I'm going to make this great work of art. I'm going to do the same thing as Michelangelo did. What?
No, probably not. It probably would have been, part of it. Maybe I think some of these guys are really cynical. Where they're like, these idiots will just take anything.
Yes.
I do think part of it's that. I think generally speaking, when someone has a super abstract modern art piece like that, they usually have something that shows some mastery of technical skill in their catalog. Like, I don't think that someone who's done nothing good at all, like Jackson Pollock would be the biggest like sinner of this. But other than him, like I can't think of anyone who's super mainstream or who made it to super mainstream who doesn't do any art classically first, or somewhat classically, you know, like someone who hasn't done some sort of realistic painting or some sort of you know, modern painting that like actually has mastery of art techniques. And then I think they would be able to go and do the line through the canvas, which I still think is kind of stupid. But I mean, you know, then again though, like how stupid is it? It's like four countries' flag are basically like a variation of white with just like a line through it. You know what I mean? Way more than four, probably like eight.
Yeah.
So it's like it's kind of like a yeah. I don't know. I don't know what they think. I don't know what they think. I don't think that they think that they're gonna be Michelangelo though. I think that they think it's either tongue in cheek funny to them, like where they're like, haha, look at these idiots who are still gonna buy our art, or it's like, you know, I'm being critical of art. You know, I think that generally that's the one that it is. It's like, I'm saying like, you know, you guys don't know what art is so much so that you'll just take this as art. Or this is like, you know, whatever. People, I mean, I think the problem with a lot of these modern art pieces is all you do is you just like get a guy like me and just like feed me a bunch of like lines, and then I'll just like go up there and talk for like 30 minutes in front of like a group of millionaires, and then eventually like 3 or 4 of them just have to be like, man, what he said about that line on the painting, it's got me thinking. And then they just start thinking with their wallet. You know what I mean? Because like ultimately the people who are buying these modern art pieces and then donating them are not, you know, it's fun coupons to them. It's not like money.
Well, yes, sometimes they used to have this, they'd have this large canvas that's on the wall. And then you get this guy, he runs up with the paintbrush and starts, yeah, exactly,
Yeah, like Pollock, yeah.
Yeah, whooshing these things up on the wall. And then, you know, and it does 14 different colors, and then lets it dry, and then sells it for a whole bunch of money. People say, oh, yes, you can see. Well, what is it that, what's the message that's being conveyed? What is, you know?
I don't have any idea what the message that's being conveyed, but I can tell you this, because we did get on the Pollock thing, and we did get on that.
Yeah.
During the Cold War, the CIA secretly promoted abstract expressionism, including Pollock's, as a propaganda tool. It was used to counter Soviet socialist realism, and it was supposed to showcase American artistic freedoms, individualism, and cultural superiority.
Ah.
So the answer as to why was, you know, why was it so popular? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. You know, there's subsidies and and you know.
Yeah, and what you know, like you just talk about Soviet Union. They talk about their art or the buildings. They call it brutal.
Brutalism. I love brutalism.
Yeah,
it looks
brutalism.
so cool.
Yes, and yeah, and you know, that's actually, in some respects, it's an art form.
I agree.
Yeah,
I was literally, when you said brutalism, I literally went right to Ohio Street or Dearborn Street Post Office. It's not quite brutalist because it's made of brick, but just a big block, like, you know, tiny thin windows, all that. I do love that look. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, well, and they also they're artists that usually the art form is usually done in black and white, you know, and it's really kind of foreboding, and it's kind of you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, so, well, and it's kind of like it's a cool break from, you know, there's the Art Deco buildings, or yes. I don't even know if it's Art Deco, but like Wrigley's, I think, is older than Art Deco, but yes, like the Wrigley building is really cool, and the Gleeker Center is really, really cool. These like older, you know, more standard buildings. But then I love the Hancock and the Sears Tower. I mean, I think that those are some of the best looking buildings ever. Water Tower Place is right up there behind it because a full marble skyscraper is just very over the top and very cool. Very Chicago. But I like those type of skyscrapers, and I think that a lot of people would say that they're less artistic than something like the Wrigley Building, because the Wrigley Building has like these sconces and has, you know, the gargoyles and has all the like little tiny art pieces and all that. Yes. But like, to me, the idea of the engineering becoming like synonymous with the art is important, and like the fact that you can look on the outside of the Sears, well, less the Sears, more the Hancock, you look on the outside of the Hancock and you can see exactly why that building's strong. Exactly why that building is, going to be standing for a long, long time. You see the giant X trusses up the whole thing all the way to the top, and like it, when you're inside, you can see if you're in like a penthouse or not even a penthouse, if you're in any of the rooms there, you can see the trusses inside your building, and they're all like, it's just very cool. I like that type of stuff. And I think that there's some sort of artistic value there, but in kind of what you're saying is like, is that in a way for like an architect, is that not similar to the line through the blank canvas? It's like you just got to expose all the stuff. You didn't have to put sconces. You didn't have to put another material on it. You didn't have to whatever. But I think that fusing art and design is kind of like the way that it's gone a little bit more. That's why like even something as simple as like the iPhone. Like this is a handsome looking phone.
Yes.
You show this to someone when the phone first came out, when the iPhone first came out, you'd blow their mind. You would blow their mind that it was this thin and that it was, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and so there's an element to that I do appreciate and I do like.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's cheapened art. I think it has cheapened art. I think to some degree.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's Nipsco calling. I think.
Oh yeah, and I think there's also I think there's also an aspect of suffering to art.
Art is pain. Yeah.
Well, no. Van Gogh would be the perfect example. You
With
would
the
say,
ear.
That, and he never made any money, and he just didn't do anything, and he died penniless, and he suffered for his art, don't you see? He suffered.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect, and so then I say, oh, this is fantastic. You can see, but and so I don't, I think a lot of times people attribute things to art that was never intended to be there in the first place. I mean, I think Van Gogh was painting it, thinking, I'm going to sell one of these things one of these days. I think the only thing he sold was to his brother Theo.
Yeah.
And
his brother basically kept as the reason that we know who he is because his brother like kept them all and was like, I know these are good,
Yes. No, exactly.
And that's literally what that song by Don McLean is about, is talking to Van Gogh and basically saying like, you realize that you actually were pretty, you were pretty important. And I think that there's also an episode of the show Doctor Who where he goes and he takes Van Gogh back. It's a pretty common phenomenon in media. Anyone who's even art associated, I think, feels this genuine, like, actual level of pain for Van Gogh, where you say, he didn't realize not only was he going to be a accepted artist, he was going to be, like, the fucking standard, Like, he is, for his style of art, there isn't anything close. There's nothing close. It's just him. And Monet is really, really good too. I don't want to. I know Monet does similar stuff, so I don't want to act like Monet is not. Monet is awesome, but he's there. It's him. It's Monet. It's Picasso. It's Michelangelo. Like those, he's named with Michelangelo, who he I'm sure looked up to and thought, oh my God, it's so crazy. Look, Raphael. Oh my God, it's so amazing. It's so crazy. You know what I mean? Da Vinci. He's there with them, and I think that people resonate very much so with the idea that he was, unfortunately just never got the opportunity to see that. You see that in yourselves, everyone hopes that of themselves almost, because a lot of people don't have good self-talk. A lot of people don't have a mental thing in their head that's like, hey, it's okay. You could take a couple more times to do this. Hey, you'll get it the next time. Hey, no, most people get like, you're a loser. This is why blank, blank, blank was right. This is why this was right. This is why, people are hard on themselves. And so I think that people like to see a story like that where at the very least, like, yeah, he was hard on himself and he lived a miserable life, but once he was in the ground and everything cooled off for a little bit, people turned back around and realized, oh, he's very important, to the point where, one of the most famous sayings is, you die 2 times. Once when they put you in the ground, and the last time someone ever says your name. He's going to be living quite a bit longer than he bargained for, you know what I mean? So it's... Yeah. There is, there's a beauty to it. Ultimately, that's why I really like to abstract it, because it's like there's just so much that is art. I mean, a conversation can be art. Your food can be art. Your, whatever can be art. I think when we're talking about belongs in a museum art. It has to serve no other purpose than to be aesthetic. But I think that the art in everyday life is arguably more important than the big the big cascading things. Like I think that going to a beach and having a day where you don't get a single thing of sand blown in your face. There's some art there. You know what I mean? Going to a negotiation from Facebook Marketplace and getting what you want and not pissing the person off. There's an art to that,
Yeah, but then of course you just make it in anything. You picking your nose. That's art. That's.
But I think that intent is the key driver between it not being anything. It's like you have to. If you go outside to go and take the trash out, there's nothing necessarily art there. But if you go outside in the morning with the intention of just listening to the symphony of birds and bugs and all of that, I think you could find the art in it. I think that would be acceptable.
I think. I think just experiencing the human condition. I don't know if that's art, to tell you the truth. I mean,
that's fair. I think it's a fair.
I think you got to make a statement. You got to, it's sort of like it's sort of like a guy gets on the diving board. Yeah, he went up on the diving board, and he never jumps off. He's no artist. You got to.
Right.
You got. And I think that the guy. The guy that does it, the guy that overcomes his fear, the guy that the guy that sacrifices. That's kind of I guess the traditional understanding of what art is. There's got to be something more than simply just laying down and experiencing something.
Well, that I do agree with. I think a lot of people actually, it's a good distinction because a lot of people would hear what I said and think that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying just anything is art. I'm saying anything has the capacity to be, I could go into work and I could make pizza, or I could go into work and I genuinely think I could make art. Now, granted, I'm doing something with whatever, but if I pull it out and it looks fantastic and I think the other person looks fantastic, to me, it's like, it may be food, but there was an art to it. Someone couldn't just walk over here and do it. I think that's another part about art. It's like, you can't just, you have to learn it. You have to whether from learning yourself, whether from learning technique, whether from, other life experience, you can't, even, you fly enough. You can tell when a plane, or when a pilot is an artist, when they, that land, all those tires hit at the same time. And that cushion of air just drops out from under you and you're just perfectly, you know what I mean? That type of stuff, I guess what I mean. I think art is a tough term for it because it is such a, it's so important for art to be what art was still. But I think the idea of finding the artistic elements in your human experience, in the human condition, is important.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but that's different than art. That's finding something artistic. I agree with that. It's artistic. You can see somebody, you see a girl walking down the street and she's made up quite well, She's got the makeup on just right. She's got the clothes on right. She's got the handbag just about right. She's very artistic, Walking, and she's walking. The way she walks, a model is very artistic. The way they walk down there, but that's not art. That's just an artistic aspect. You have an artistic. The way you carry yourself is very artistic. The way that but that's not art. I think that some people, and I kind of agree with this. There's got to be some kind of sacrifice with art.
I could see that. I think I've said that about I've said that a couple times about musicians, and I think it's true. It's just the idea of, well, honestly, you see it in regular life. Probably anyone sees it in regular life. When you've gone through something that requires a lot of grief. Or has a lot of pain associated with it, losing someone or whatever, and then you go and interact with someone, like for you, right? So you by the time you were 18, you had neither your parents and you had your situation going on, right? So you were like, had dealt with real shit, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And so then when you come in and meet with another 18-year-old who hasn't dealt with any real shit, and they're like telling you about like, and I got a parking ticket today and it's the worst thing ever and I'm going to freak out, whatever. You have to sit there and maybe you'll be polite and be like, oh yeah, that does suck. But like there's a part of you that's like, brother, like have some perspective here. You know what I mean? Like it's all good, you know? Like
I think we do resent people that have it too easy.
Yeah.
You get well, they had this in there was that movie. I'll leave it at that. But there was the movie called Amadeus.
Okay.
And it was a great movie. This Abrams, Maury Abrams, he was a great villain. But what the story was about is that for what's his name, Amadeus or Mozart, it just came easy. It's just, and that's the way that they portrayed it in the movie. It wasn't really that way, but that's the way they portrayed it. And They portrayed Salieri as the villain. But the idea was that it was just so easy. It was so easy for Mozart. And Salieri was working day in, day out, working on these, and he never got anywhere close to where, and this young punk comes in, and he's doing this fantastic music. And Salieri is a guy who was up until that time considered the guy. And you see this funk kid comes in and does much better music than he could ever dream about doing. And, he certainly resents him. That's at least in the movie. But I think that's true in anything. You work 40 years and you finally come up with this idea. It took you 40 years to get, and this smart-ass kid walks in the room, and he's 21 years old, and he comes up with the same idea, but better. And, and he's making more money than you ever made, and he's got more accolades than you ever going to get. And it just came easy for him, and you tend to resent that. And so anyway, and I think that has something to do with art.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it exists in every element of life. I mean, it's even going on right now in NASCAR. There's a YouTuber who's basically kind of getting into NASCAR, and he's maybe skipping some steps, to be honest, because he's famous. But like, he's trying. It's not. Hey, if NASCAR lets you drive it, you're gonna try and drive it if you want to be in there, right? Mm-hmm. So he's trying, and people are getting mad at him. But that's kind of been what's been cool is he. Being kind of like about my age, he recognizes, like, oh shoot, this is exactly how that looks. I look like the snot-nosed kid who's just rolling up in here, and I can just do whatever I want, and everyone else is like, had, Christmases that they couldn't buy anything. They've had their family's screaming at them to stop racing. They're doing all this, whatever. And so he's like, all right, let me start back in the lower series, and I'll work my way back up through the whole thing, and paying your dues, right? The idea of paying your dues. I do think there is some level of dues paid that people want to see for art. People do want to see something that you went through. I mean, it's the idea of like, some kid's a 16-year-old kid and they have all the political opinions in the world. It's like, I can respect you as a human and I can respect your ideas as a human, but I take them with a huge grain of salt because you haven't participated in the system you're criticizing whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter to me. Like, oh, well, I think everyone should have a free house. Me who like has, had to like work incredibly hard to like have a house and all that. Like, it's like, I'm not going to agree with you. You know what I mean? Now, if you told me, that like 4 years ago, maybe I would agree with you because I would be a more level playing field or whatever. But, now that I've participated in the system more and seen how, attainable it was if I was just willing to not live, in somewhere that was, super hot. But once I realized it was attainable, I started to kind of feel like, oh, well, these people aren't fighting with me. They're fighting in a way against me, even though they also want more for the regular class of people. It doesn't matter. They're still fighting against me because I had to do this. And it's not I had to do this, therefore you had to do this. It's I had to do this, and it makes sense now that I've done it why I had to do it. So now you need to go through it too. because it'll make sense to you when you're done with it, you know? That's not to say that, you know, I mean, like, I certainly am not Mr. Grinder over here, you know what I mean? I got a pretty sweet deal in life, you know, I'm not bitching. That said, it is attainable to live a normal life, and that's why those political conversations go so off the rails so quickly, because you're just oftentimes arguing with someone who's like not looking at the objective reality that you've experienced whatsoever. They're just like totally disregarding like your actual life and telling you what they think from what they've learned, and you're like, dude, like, you know, I say it sometimes to my friends in video games, and I hope some of them are watching this. I don't get my competition from the hour or two of video games at the end of the night. I get it in real life. I get it with my business. I get it with my friends there. So, anyways, I would say that's a pretty good place for us to button it up.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again for another episode of the Scully Sez podcast. We are going to be on everywhere that I said earlier. Facebook, well, not Twitter, sorry. Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok,
YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah.
The most important one, some would say. You know, please just give us your comments. It's at ScullySezPat@gmail.com or ScullySezTom@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, send to your mortal enemy, and we will see you again next week.
All right. There we go.
All right.